Hey guys, welcome to the 5 worst episodes of Samurai Jack Season 5. So let's get on with the list. Number 5. To start off, I'm going with Episode 5. The first part of this episode, I think, is probably the most enjoyable, at least to me, which is the Scotsman's army attacking Aku in his lair. Now, they should know that this is kind of a futile attempt, but it's still really badass in seeing this whole army attacking Aku and interrupting him, and it's really nice to see the Scotsman back, and unfortunately is killed. But fortunately, he comes back as a Force Ghost, which is really cool. But most of this episode is Jack kind of showing Ashi the world that Aku has made. The reason this is at number 5 is because there are some badass elements in the Scotsman's army and his hilarious daughters. There is some character dynamics between Jack and Ashi and some development with Ashi's character. And some really cool moments with those beast kids and Ashi being electrocuted and then kicking the crap out of the robot guy, or guy in a robot suit. So a lot of really cool elements. But for me, the episodes in my top 5 episodes just won out a little bit more than this one. Mainly because I just really didn't care much about those beast kids or things that were happening, even though that was kind of the catalyst to getting Jack to give up all the rest of his hope. Numero 4. Next goes to Episode 1. Episode 1 was obviously very important in establishing the tone that this season was going to take. And we get a neat fight with Samurai Jack fighting Scaramouche for the first time, defeating him, and an introduction to the Daughters of Aku and their training as they grow up. But that's kind of all this episode was an establishing episode, which obviously is important. There just wasn't really much going on. It was enjoyable, but all it did was establish it's been 50 years, Jack is rough and grumpy, he fights a robot guy, and hey, there's these daughters that are being raised as assassins. So like I said, still enjoyable, just not a whole lot there. Numero 3. Number 3 goes to Episode 4. This was a very strange episode, I guess, but it was pretty similar to the previous seasons of Samurai Jack, in that they're very quirky. He has been inside monsters multiple times. So it's kind of weird, this giant monster eats Jack and Ashi, the only survivor of the Daughters of Aku from Samurai Jack's attack from Episode 3. So there's this giant monster that swallows Ashi and Jack, and the whole episode is basically them surviving, Ashi bitching at Jack the whole time. It is pretty funny how he ties her up and uses her kind of as a backpack, and fending off all these monsters inside the giant monster, and they have a pretty interesting escape. Everything in this monster looks pretty interesting. But the entire episode was just Ashi yelling at Jack the entire time, and Jack just kind of ignoring her, and then they escape the monster. So not a whole lot of development happened in this episode, both character or otherwise. Number 2. Now if you've seen my top 5 episodes, you now know what the last 2 are going to be on this list. So number 2 goes to Episode 9. Basically, nothing happens in this episode until the last couple minutes of the episode. Jack and Ashi walk around, try to find some clothes. Jack decides to leave Ashi and go on his own. So he ends up somehow where he fought the Guardian by the Guardian's portal, surrounded by all the bodies and everything of all these ancient warriors and everything. So it's kind of centered around Jack's choice to leave her until the very end when she tracks him down, convinces him to keep her with him, and then Aku shows up with Scaramouche because Scaramouche was on his quest to tell Aku that Jack has lost his sword. So here Aku thinks that Jack doesn't have a sword, but since then he got it back. So Aku straight up destroys Scaramouche for the bad information. But before Aku flees, he notices that Ashi has a part of him. Now this is the progression in the episode that we get. Before these last couple minutes, there's really nothing to this episode. It's kind of filler, it's slowly paced, and then we get to this scene which actually progresses the plot in the transformation of Ashi into Dark Ashi. So they do have a really cool fight here, and it's full of tension, you know, what are they gonna do kind of thing. And then at the very end, Jack gives up. So I felt that that part was a little bit rushed. The fight itself was cool, but not much happened and it was fairly poorly paced. And number 1. Number 1 goes to Episode 8. Now, I know a lot of us really enjoyed this episode and really enjoy the romance between Jack and Ashi. It was full of like little humorous stuff of them being shy around each other and getting nervous when they touch each other. So that was fairly humorous. I don't think it was entirely necessary to do that kind of stuff. And for the most part, you know, fighting the giant group of tigers together and then going around that alien Borg ship, it did really seem like a lot of filler for the sole purpose of getting Jack and Ashi to have feelings for each other. And before this, it wasn't established really enough to me for the type of relationship that they would have, this romantic relationship. Because before, it was more like a mentor-student kind of thing, like a dynamic duo that could blossom into this given a little bit of time. But this was like a one-episode span of time in which they suddenly just kind of like each other. So it was kind of awkward. Again, with the poor pacing, very, very rushed. The leech monster that they were going to fight was kind of weird. And like I said, I feel like this whole episode was a lot of filler. There was only one point to it, and that was to have Jack and Ashi form this relationship, which they could have done in the span of these last few episodes, and they didn't. And although you can see a lot of humor in their awkward touching and being nervous around each other, Jack seeing Ashi naked, a lot of humorous stuff in there. It's still fairly enjoyable, but in the context of the entire series, with pacing, with story and everything, it could have really been stripped down and developed a little bit better, I think. And that is why I think episode 8 is the worst episode in Samurai Jack Season 5. Now, if you guys have a different list, please put it in the comments. I'm interested to see what others thought were the best and worst episodes of Samurai Jack. So go ahead and list those in the comments below. I think that'll be a lot of fun to see, but just give us your thoughts in the comments in general. But as always, share the video with your friends. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you later.